Oh Lord, here we go again. I just dropped 2 tabs and I lost my friends. Oh Lord, here we go again. I just dropped 2 tabs and I lost my friends. I'm like, oh Lord, here we go again.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Rip City Real Talk is back. Craig Moshka, Anthony Blaylock here as your hosts. What a week, man. What a road trip. Lots of games to cover today. Lots of little mini reports that came out throughout the week that we will discuss for you guys. Give our opinions on it per the usual and kind of go from there. How you doing, bud?
It's pretty good right now. I would say I'm feeling a 7 out of 10 in Blazer land. I think we got some really much needed wins this week. We'll talk about one loss that, we'll talk about it, but I'm feeling pretty good. I think Blazer fans are feeling good too. So what about you?
Yeah, great. Since I think they said since April 27th, basically the last game we played in April. So far all of May. Most of that in the stretch in April, we've been a top 10 defense, ranked, yes, I think, 7th, the top offense in the league. So, again, level of opponent, not super amazing when it comes to that necessarily with the guys that some of these teams have had, but improvement all around the board. And it's a good time to start that improvement and get hot going into playoffs. Still have a rough stretch to end the season, but right now, I think we've pretty much done what we need to do to solidify ourselves at least the 5-6 seed, ideally, and we'll discuss that a little bit. But yeah, I can't complain here. I think as far as the team is going, it's going in the right direction.
Hell yeah. Something, and we'll talk about this week, something that's been critical, which we've been critical of him all year. I feel like Nurkic is a beast this week. And if you go back and you watch some of the film from this week, he was the difference maker, and he is the difference maker for our defense, which we know. But, dude, he looked amazing this week in stretches, and I feel like that could turn the tide a little bit for how we're feeling in a series coming up in 2 weeks.
Yeah, he's been the biggest impactor for sure. Then we knew that, right? We knew that he's our third best player. Cantor just can't do it on defense. As good of a rebounder and as good of a post-game scorer that he is, we need I don't know how to put this, but the reactiveness, the ability to spot and know when to go help, the things that Nurk gives you with the doubles, getting back in time, the footwork, the speed. He changes everything as far as the defense goes. So we'll definitely discuss that. He comes up in a lot of these games. He's been an absolute monster. And the 3-guard lineup, who I know we've been pretty critical of the 3-guard lineup. I still don't think the 3-guard lineup is going to cut it in playoffs against these teams that have these wings and forwards. But for now, it's been a hell of a ride. It's been really fun to watch them. And that leads us right into the Boston game, I think. That'll something we have this week.
I had some notes from the Boston game just to remember. There was no Kemba Walker in that game.
Right.
Our defense was so good. Now, at the same time, we talk about level of opponent. Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, they're big wings, and they typically do give us problems because there's a lot of switchability there. Dame had 26 and 13 assists. He looked unbelievable as a facilitator. I like that game. I felt good about it. We won by 10. It was 129 to 119, and everybody played well. Powell had 23. Nurkic had a double-double, 14 and 11. It was a great game all around.
Yeah, I have that down as well. I have it down that we, just the guards in general, I believe that's the game that we got about 82 points out of our guards.
Yeah.
So,
CJ had 33.
Again, did he? Yeah. So I had that. Powell got 23. The shooting was just ridiculous. It was one of those games where both teams shot over 50% from 3.
Yes.
I think it was 71-71 at halftime. It was just all offense, very little defense. It was crazy.
Yeah. And we shot 51% for our field goal percentage. If we shoot over 50%, that's ball game.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Boston. You kind of put it out there. They're tough matchup wise on offense. Their offense, I should say, for us to defend against because of Tatum and Brown being so long and being able to do so many different things and get their own shots and shoot over our guys, et cetera, et cetera. But they don't have a lot of bigs. That's kind of the one thing that Boston's been. They tried to get one in the trade deadline. They were unsuccessful. They really haven't had a good big probably since Horford. I guess was probably their last main big one. So
I would agree.
That's a big deal, and it allowed us to really score in the paint and open up our guards to get a lot of open threes. And we saw what the result was. 82 points between CJ, Powell, and Dame is that's hard to stop.
Yeah, you want to know what else is kind of crazy about this game? So we played a really tight 8-man rotation Cantor played 18 minutes and Simons played 20. Carmelo played 27. But all the starters played over 30 minutes except Nurk, and he played 29. So, it's really just our starters. And if our starters can hang and bang with the other team, at this point, it's looked great this week. There's only one time where we haven't, and it's the next game moving into the Hawks game.
Yeah, and especially with Boston, you start to see the activity that the smaller lineups give you as far as defense switchability. Boston had 18 turnovers, man. 18. That's probably the primary reason they lost the game, to be 100% honest with you. The ball control, especially at the end. They had that Marcus Smart technical where he got ejected from the game for giving Nurk the old smack around in the place you don't smack a guy around, for the sake of a family-friendly pod.
What is the problem with DJ and Nurk getting smacked in the face and below the belt? Like, that's just those poor guys, man.
Yeah, that was a whole weird situation because he hits him. Nurk kind of crunches, then he knocks Smart over. They call Nurk for the offensive foul, and then ejects Smart. I mean, how often do you see that? Like, a guy gets a technical, obviously fouls Nurk before Nurk fouls him, and they still go offensive and get the ball back to Boston. I mean, it didn't matter in the end, but Smart was on absolute fire. He was crushing us during that little stretch. So to get him out of the game, that's a huge call.
Yep. And in my opinion, Marcus Smart is the guard stopper for them. I know Tatum and Brown can guards as well, but Marcus Smart is the one I fear the most because he's really aggressive. He's a trapper. He gets in your face. He's the Drew Holiday build that I fear when we play guards like that. And to be honest with you, he was nullified by the shooting of CJ and Powell. They really took advantage of it. Something that did pop up for me that we're going to talk about a little bit this week is Powell in the clutch has been kind of not great this year in clutch minutes. So do we avoid that, or do we just keep letting him shoot through some of the funk there at the end of the game?
Yeah, I don't think we're seeing as much of it in either way because we haven't had too many situations with just Dame and CJ out there together with him. So I think we're starting to see as Dame gets back into form, which he's absolutely gotten back into form this week. I think every single game he had over 5 threes.
Yep.
So it's going to start taking away from what they need. Powell, get deflections and steals kind of guy, go down and attack the rim. That's where his offense has been coming at the end of games. Yeah. He does have the ability to draw fouls, and that's going to be really dangerous. We don't have another guy that can drive at the rim like that. I mean, Dame can, but Dame does it typically from the top of the key, gets around a guy, and then uses that acceleration and change of pace that he's so good at to get to the rim, whereas Powell goes right at guys. I mean, he gets a lot of contact. He fights through a lot of contact. He goes up for dunks. He does all these different things, and that's where the end of these games, I think as teams start to focus on CJ and Dame, he's going to get the looks every once in a while, but I don't think they're going to go through him purposely to make that happen.
Yeah, I hope not. And I love Norm. It's just when you have Damian Lillard, he should be taking the shot. And CJ is a very clutch player at times too in his career. I mean, the Denver series in 2019, there's a lot of examples where CJ has stepped up. I think for me, so I felt okay about the Celtics because I knew Kemba was out and I knew that we would play well against them. I expected us to beat the Hawks. Now, it is a road trip, so the guys are kind of tired. There also was the thing going around about the tornado evacuation warning at like 3 a.m. or whatever. They landed late, and then they had to get up to get evacuated. So they were probably tired. I'm not going to make excuses for these guys. But what did you see in that Hawks game that you had takeaways on?
It was just the double teams that they were throwing at Young, and it was opening up so much open shots for other guys. And unfortunately, Bogdanovich was the guy who got left open the most, and he was just on absolute fire. And he had 7 threes. It was basically the same thing almost every single time. Young comes up, attacks, we have trouble slowing down at the point of attack. It's been a problem with this defense all year. So they throw 2 at him, which really kind of slowed him down. He ended up with 11 assists. He still did pretty good. Yep. But the problem with that is you can't throw Nurk out to help. You can't throw Nurk on that double team himself. You can't have him go out to the perimeter to try to stop that extra pass because they have but Collins and Capella. Yep. When you have 2 bigs that are that dangerous, I mean, Capella is one of the most efficient players in the entire league around the rim, and him and Young have such a good relationship with lobs and all these different things. You can't take Nurk out of there. He kind of has to stay glued in the paint on these guys because they're going to get it inside every opportunity they get. Collins is such a good offensive rebounder, so that when he gets an opportunity to go down and help Capella, you just have to have those guys there.
Yeah.
And then when you think about it, I mean, they have Schnell. I don't know how to say his name, but he shoots 56% from three. He doesn't qualify to be one of the top 3-point shooters in the league because he hasn't made at least 1 3 a game, and that's the average you have to keep up with in order to be in that stat.
Mhm.
But if he did make a couple more threes and he actually averaged 1 per game, he'd be probably the top 3-point shooter in the league at about 56%. So you have to worry about him. And then when he makes that extra pass over to Bogdanovic, it's when the guy's that hot, it's hard to stop.
Yeah.
And there's just so many ways that Atlanta attacks you. And I think you're absolutely right. I think you had that really high energy game that came down to the wire against Boston. I mean, we ended up beating them by 10 points, but really up until about 3 minutes into the game, it was, I mean, it was a tough energy game. And then you get to Atlanta at 3:30. Then you have the tornado thing. You're already tired. And then you have to deal with a guy like Young who's going to blow past you, and you have to devote so much attention to him to take the ball out of his hands. Not to mention he, like Dame, can shoot from, half court. I mean, my goodness, you have to worry about all those different things.
Yep.
That's just a team that's going to be really scary for anybody in the East. I don't think there's a team in the East that wants to play Atlanta. I think they figured it out. They've gotten healthy. They didn't have Bogdanovic most of the year. They didn't have Gallinari.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. And he had 7 threes against us. He went 7 to 10.
He had 28 points, and he just looked like a mismatch all night. Because and that's I thought the Hawks were going to be better this year, or right where they're at right now, about that 4, 5, 6 range in the East. Because between Bogdanovic and Gallinari, they added 2 guys who can score in a multitude of ways with Trae Young. And with Trae Young's passing and Capella and just the stuff that they've unlocked, they have kind of a ridiculous lineup for Trae Young to be maximized. And, I mean, it's just one of those things where we just didn't close out well enough on defense. Our perimeter defense was not very good. And like you said, there's the Nurk conundrum is, do you want to give up 60, 70 points in the paint if Nurkic pulls out every single time because it's going to be a free run dunk for Collins or Capella? It's just not a great matchup for us, and we didn't play that well.
Nope. I mean, they're definitely tougher than they used to be. The bench, they got Lou Williams at the trade deadline for Rondo, who really gives them a veteran guy that can score from anywhere. And it's just one of those situations where you double him, he moves around. It didn't help that we struggled a little bit. The starters did all right. They played pretty good considering, but our bench was bad. I mean, Anthony came in, went 1 for 7. He shot 0 of 5 from 3. As our primary backup guard, that's just not going to cut it. It's that lack of offense on the bench kind of allowed them to pull away. They got up by 20, and we just couldn't quite recoup. I mean, we only lost by, I think, 7 points or so in the end there, or 8 points, something like that.
Yeah, you're right. It was 9, but it was close.
9. Okay, it was single digits. So, I mean, that was a lot of garbage time, and, doesn't really make a difference. But at the end of the day, it was just we couldn't keep up with them on the bench, and our scoring just couldn't match up their shooting. So it happens, like you said. I mean, it was one of those games. You can't win them all. It was still an extremely successful road trip. You're going to lose against Atlanta on a back-to-back with the whole issue of the tornado and the stuff in the morning. You're going to lose against them. It happens.
And even taking that away, I mean, when you look at the thing that I look for on this trip was Nurkic playing at Nurkic level, which he played okay. It was fine. And then the other thing is Dame. You said it at the start of the pod, and it's very true. Dame elevates our ceiling if he is maximized, if he is on another level, a superstar level, which he was this last week. I think he's kind of recovered from whatever injuries or shootings. Yeah. I don't know what was bothering him, but he wasn't hitting deep threes. He wasn't getting around guys explosively earlier on right after the All-Star break. And you could tell it was just kind of wearing on him. We got him a little rest. We got a few get-right games against some bad teams, and it feels like his confidence has just skyrocketed. I think he's had 29 or 35 in between 29 and 35
in that range.
Single game in the last 7 games. And we're 6-1 in 7 games or something like that?
Yeah, it's been a game changer with Nurk coming back and looking like his old self. And there's no doubt that this is the Nurk that we had before he got hurt, before the ACL or broken leg, I think it was, whatever, before his injury that he suffered before the bubble and all that good stuff. So this is the Nurk that we've been needing to have come back. It's about 2 years past due. He's back.
Yeah.
Dame, I don't know if it's the rest or really it was just a knees bruise. He had some just little minor things, nothing severe.
Sure.
So I think it just healed up, and then you have CJ and Norm playing like they've been playing, and it's a good team. It's a good team to watch. There's a lot more hustle out there.
Yeah. I don't really have a ton to say about this Cavs game. Do you want to go super in depth on a Cavs team that looks like they're tanking their way straight to the lotto?
141 to 105. That's a butt kicking. They're still a decent team. They're one of those teams that's like in the next couple of years,
Yes.
Then get rid of that Love contract and bring in some younger talent to go with Sexton and Garland and some of these other
Yes.
guys that they have. Who knows? But right now, we didn't have Powell. Powell didn't play that game, and out of nowhere, Derek Jones starts.
Yes.
That was the big storyline there, in my opinion. So he starts,
Yeah.
hasn't played, coach's decision. I think he played 4 minutes like the last 5 games leading up to it. We talked about it in the last pod. So he comes out of nowhere. He gets a start. He looked all right. I mean, he was cruising around. He was making plays. It's definitely looked better. Yeah, it looks better than what we've seen throughout the year from him. People, for some reason, are infatuated with the guy, and I just don't understand why they think he's so amazing. I don't know if it's because they bought into him being such a defensive guy in the offseason or whatever the case is. We had high hopes for him, but he just has not looked good, aggressive at all. His energy levels have been concerning. He doesn't score. I mean, he gets his dunks every once in a while, and he'll hit him 3 here and there, but it's not enough to want to warrant him really, honestly, being in the rotation. I'd much rather have Hollis Jefferson or even Little play over him, but that's beside the point. He starts, which was just interesting. I mean, you expect maybe Nasir to start or one of these other guys that have been getting minutes, and he comes out of nowhere, so that was interesting.
It's odd to me from this. If you're in Stotts' doghouse and you don't play at all, and then randomly Powell gets knocked out due to a small injury, and I'm fine with resting him in this situation. That's great. But why not start? Why not start Nasir Little? Like, why not?
Give him the run.
What in the heck is Stotts' deal with Derek Jones where he's like, I hate you. I'm not going to play you for several games in a row. And then, oh, man, let's start you and play you 20 minutes in a game. I mean, if you want to say it's matchup based, okay, great. Why don't we ever play him anymore against bigger teams? It's confounding to me that Stotts would make that decision. Now, I thought Derek Jones looked fine. I think Nasir Little looked fine. He always plays well. I mean, he had 8 points in 15 minutes or whatever. Nasir looks fine. I don't understand it, and I don't feel like Stotts gets grilled a lot about his lineup decisions. I feel like people just kind of give him softballs, and I'm not really sure what the deal is with that. But we'll talk more about that later, I suppose.
Yeah, and I'm glad you brought up Little and the rest of the bench really in this one. I mean, granted, it was a blowout, and they got a lot of run, a little bit more minutes than they normally would, but Melo had 16, Anthony had 10, Cantor got 18.
Yeah.
I mean, the bench in this one absolutely took care of business against a bench that they absolutely should have dominated. They don't have anybody outside their few starters that really scare you off the bench.
Yeah.
So that was
I feel like defense kind of sets the tone for that game. I mean, if we get really good stops on defense, then it just sort of translates to better offense. I don't know how to explain it other than that. When you're playing from behind and you're trying to catch up on a team that runs the transition game, that's something that kind of wears us out a little bit. And I feel like we shoot worse in those games trying to catch up. I like seeing DJ out there, man. I know that we've been critical of him. He just looked good and locked in, and I feel like there's going to be times in the playoffs where we need him locked in for certain matchups. I hope. I mean, I hope we can use him at all in the playoffs. We'll see.
Yeah, no, for sure. Other than that, man, we had 64 points in the paint, so we took care of business. Love is not a good defender. I mean, it's not like Jarrett Allen's terrible, but it was just one of those games where everything was clicking. 57% field goal percentage. You expect us to come out and play good against a team like that, and they did. So that's still a good sign. I mean, that's a healthy sign as a team. Like, you want to take care of the bad teams and play competitive against the good teams to have any kind of confidence going forward. And then forward, we went on to probably easily the biggest game of the last couple of weeks as far as standings go. We take care of the Lakers, man. And there's a lot of stuff that happened here. This is the first game that we've had live fans since, March before the bubble. Just crazy, man. The energy was just awesome. How'd you feel about the game?
I felt giddy. Like, I felt kind of silly about it. I watched the guys warm up, and I watched Mark Mason do the intros, and I watched Dame. I think he felt elated that they could play in front of fans. And it just felt good, man. And then, the first 5 to 6 minutes of the game, they were difference makers. Those fans were in there cheering. And I think everybody on Blazers Twitter was saying, this sounds like, 10,000 people, not 2,000 people. And that's a huge credit to the fans. Look, from day one this season in the preseason, I said, I'm nervous about not having fans in the building. That is a big difference maker for us as a Portland franchise, and we feed off that energy. And I think you've hit on it several times over the last few weeks that our defense was crappy and we looked a little lethargic on offense. Fans can help fix some of that. Fans can inject that energy and give them that boost that you need sometimes. So, dude, I felt ridiculously ecstatic for the first half, and then the second half we got real tight, and I think it was like a 5 point game for a lot of the second half. And I'm not gonna lie, I was standing, I was like pacing around the house. I was just like, because you don't want to look in this situation, you don't want to lose to the Lakers without LeBron in that big of a game. What kind of stuff does AD? Did he drink like Michael's Magic Gatorade? Like, what's up with that? He looked like another level, and he'd been slumping this year.
Well, you gotta remember he was hurt for a long time, missed a lot of the year with the injury,
Sure.
kind of came back and was only playing. Man, he had the back spasms the night before, although I think that was BS. I think that he just took himself out of the game to get ready for tonight. I'm not buying it, bro. I'm not buying it.
I love it.
You can slap some paint on that car and try to call it new, but let's be real. That's not something I'm purchasing. So he yeah, I mean, he came out and got his 36. He did a little bit of everything. It's always a tough matchup for him. That's one of the notes he made is Covington had 5 fouls. Not all necessarily on Davis, but that's his primary assignment. And just didn't look the same as he did the first time he played the Lakers on him. The first time he played the Lakers, I mean, Covington and Jones were switching on him, and it made a difference. They seemed to slow him and LeBron down a little bit, frustrating him. This time he seemed to, spin and do whatever he wanted. Nurk had to try to help a lot more. Luckily for us, outside of Anthony Davis, they don't have really any kind of bigs. I mean, Andre Drummond is – I don't know what's going on with that guy, man. I don't get it. I understand he's on the team, that he's not going to have everything go through him, but my goodness, the guy was like at least a 20-point, 15-rebound guy. He was one of those centers that can just score down low and get rebounds at ease, and I think he fouled out. If he didn't foul out, then he at least got 5 fouls and was out of the games. Basically disappeared. So
yeah, it was weird, man. And Kuzma was like the Blazers player of that game. I mean, he bricked a bunch of shots. He made some terrible plays. It was weird. I do feel like I'm not a Lakers fan by any stretch, but I feel like Marc Gasol is a better option for them. Like just pairing his good veteran defense with a little bit of outside shooting. Drummond feels
2 threes. All of his points for those 2 threes that he hit. Nurk couldn't get out there to help, and between him and Cantor's never out in the perimeter because he can't recover and get back into the paint quick enough. So he just sat down in the paint, and Gasol got those threes, and that was a big deal for them. They actually shot the 3-ball ridiculously well, and it's one of the only reasons they stayed in that game. Everybody except Kuzma, who, obviously signed a 1-day contract with Portland to come out here and join the team because, my goodness, he was just absolutely terrible.
He was bad. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, other than Anthony Davis, you could tell that team is really top heavy. And when you're missing LeBron, who, I mean, yeah, he's decent. He's not like the best player of all time or anything like that. But anyway,
he's all right. Or Dennis Schroeder. Don't forget Schroeder, bro. He turned down $20 million a year to play with them next year. The extension. He's like, no, I'm a $25 million guy. I'm a $25 million man.
I mean, I think people are divisive on Schroeder, but the guy has lit up Portland up in the past because he's that perfect little guard who can sort of change. Yeah, he can change direction really fast. He hits mid-range really well. He passes really well. I mean, he may not be an all-star level player, but the dude can play really well against Portland. So I agree with you. They're obviously a matchup we want to avoid, but I think it would be really good for the NBA to have LeBron play Curry in round 1, and it'd be really good for us to not have to play in the play-in. So
yeah, but yeah, I mean, it worries me. It definitely worries me a little bit. Only beating them by 5, like you said. No LeBron, no Schroeder. They didn't have Harrell. Who again is one of those 6-man of the year bigs that come off. He's 41 last year. He's one of the top big men off the bench in the entire league. His hustle, his offensive rebounding. Yeah, so they didn't have Trez. So all those things considered, we came out with full strength and only beat them by 5. But again, take advantage, bro. Take advantage of the games you can take advantage of. It still gives us the season series on them. We just took the season series against the Lakers, which is incredible when you think about it.
Yes.
So that takes care of that tiebreaker.
I think the one thing that made me a little bit nervous in that game, and I text you about it during the game, Anthony Simons looked completely lost in the moment in the third and fourth quarter, in the Dame resting minutes. I mean, he just got burned a bunch of times, and he's been playing better defense, and he's been shooting the lights out, dude. But he played 20 minutes and had 2 points and was just a sieve on defense, man. It was terrible.
No, Caldwell Pope, I put down Caldwell Pope just absolutely destroyed him. And I know he's a much bigger player.
Yeah.
Sure. But he's by no means an offensive juggernaut. That's not why he's on the Lakers. He's a defensive guy just because of his length. And Anthony made him look like LeBron James out there on offense. So definitely a concern because this is not the first game that we've seen Anthony struggle, and he seems to be part of the main Stotts rotation now, and it kind of has to be because as we touched on around the trade deadline, we just don't have another guard. Same with the buyout market; they didn't go out and really get anybody to help, so it's the Anthony show pretty much the rest of the way since they're starting Powell at small forward, and it's tough because he hasn't really been playing a lot of big minutes until recently, so he's still finding his way.
He is.
He's looked great offensively. We talk about the defense, and I know he only had the 2 points against the Lakers, but for the most part, I've been super impressed with his decision making. I've seen him attack a little bit more. He's making the right pass more often than not always executing the pass, but he's making the right read. So I'm not mad at him. I need to continue to see a little bit more improvement. You're coming in to be a scoring guard off the bench. I mean, that's kind of your role. It's going to be you and Melo that needs to put up the points on the bench, and so you'd like to see more than some of these shooting nights that he's had and the low point nights from him. But at the same time, it's all right. Like it's just him getting more minutes and not that he's not used to getting. This experience will grow. I worry about come playoff time because you can't go on those lulls on the bench during those minutes. But it is what it is for right now.
It might be nitpicking. I don't know. It was the biggest game of the year for us so far. We had fans in the building, and I just feel like Stotts should have pulled him at some point because he just looked lost. And if we'd have lost that game, I would have been pissed about it. But it's one of those things where the other thing is you brought up Melo, and that's a fair point. I don't feel like I've felt great or terrible about Melo at all over the last 7 games. He's been really solid, probably contributing somewhere between like 16 and 20 points in most of our wins. And his shooting has been efficient, I want to say. I mean, I haven't checked the numbers and the true shooting and all that stuff, but I feel like he's been pretty consistent, right?
Yeah, he's looked a lot better. He's still drawing fouls. His 3-point game has been good all year. I think this is the second best 3-point that he's had percentage-wise in his entire career. So he's doing the things that you want him to do. Defense is still obviously an issue. It's still a liability. It's been that way all year with Cantor, but that's not on anybody except Neil at this point. Neil went out and got Cantor and got Melo and no other help, and 2 terrible front court defenders that you brought in for specific roles. And to be fair, they're executing those roles really well. I mean, Melo's brought in to score and Cantor's brought in to rebound and do that kind of stuff. So
Cantor's still getting double-doubles. It's crazy.
Yeah, as long as Anthony can pick it up a little bit, if him and Melo can, Melo can keep doing what Melo's been doing, and him and Anthony really been playing pretty well together, it keeps our bench going just well enough to bide that tide until Powell and CJ and Dame all do their normal rotations and get back into the game, things like that.
Yeah. This Laker game was, it was ridiculously tense.
It felt like a playoff game. It felt just the intensity the whole time.
Yes.
So it felt
even
really
they
good.
felt that way. I mean, you could tell that there was a sense of desperation in them. I mean, Gasol was playing really hard. You could see Anthony Davis was like, okay, enough screwing around. Everybody other than Kuzma, who is just, he's a dweeb, man.
The hair, why, bro? Why? Like, what are you trying to do with the hair? It bugs me. I don't get it. It's
if I was on a team with LeBron and Anthony Davis, I would just be the most clean cut, do my job, get out of the way. You would never hear me in the news. You'd never see my picture on Instagram. I'd just win my rings and I'd go home and cash my checks. But this dude just can't. He just can't do it, man. He can't.
Yeah, and then you got the headband rec center freaking Caruso out there. This guy. Somebody tweeted something about how the dude looks like he swallowed a lime while he's constipated. The dude just always looks like you just want to punch him. I hate his face.
He has a punchable face, and then the other thing is he gets these really he has this energy about him, and I understand like he's an underdog and he came up through the ranks and all that stuff. But then Powell like barely touches him. He goes flying and gets the.
Okay, well, it's not. First off, he didn't barely touch him. I mean, that was a collision.
It was a mild collision. It was a mild collision. Didn't go. He went 6 feet and slid across the floor like a car hit him, going 60 miles an hour. This guy's a joke.
I mean, Powell's not a small guy. He's a little bulldog. You run into that. I don't know. That pissed me off. I'll be honest. That call that was a huge call in that game. A and B. I mean. What are the refs looking at there? The dude just made a pass and he's just kind of keep continuing the run. The Caruso ran into him.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, just because Caruso is a little wimp, for lack of better words,
not to say that I don't think we're biased because we don't talk about the refs very much. That was the worst ref game of the year, I think.
It was bad. The goaltending calls, the not
Bad.
goaltending calls. I mean,
Bad.
there were fouls all over that shouldn't have been fouls and fouls that should have been fouls. It was just
Ugly.
ridiculous. And I saw a lot of people on Twitter were all upset that Stotts didn't challenge the PAL thing. And I don't think they understand that the refs reviewed that. If they were going to overturn it, they would have overturned it during the review. They saw everything that they needed to see. They have the ability to make a change at that point in time because it was an official's review. Mm-hmm. So it is what it is, man. I don't know. There's something about that Lakers team I just hate. But I think you're absolutely right. There was a point where Caruso fouled. I want to say it was Dame. I'm drawing a blank of who got fouled. I think it was Dame, and he fouled Dame with about 27 seconds to go, I think it was. And they didn't have to foul. So put us on the line and potentially gave us the last shot. And I remember Anthony Davis walked up to Caruso and pointed up at the clock. He's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And then we go down and we got to stop. And you saw in the background during a timeout, you watched Anthony Davis go up and take the ball and smash it up against the basket or whatever the pole the basket's on. But what did you say?
It's called a stanchion, which is a weird word, but I only know that because when Paul George broke his leg, it's called a stanchion.
Encyclopedia of whatever, man. A stanchion it is. I'm taking your word on that. But yeah, I mean, you could tell he was frustrated. They knew that they didn't want to lose that game, and they played pretty good, all things considered. So tough break for them, good break for us. Screw the Lakers, don't care.
Yep.
We move on to another back-to-back game with the Spurs. So the last game we had to cover this week, and they've both been pretty close games the two times we played, and we beat them by the 1 point last time. So, yeah, man, I don't have much here. I know the starters just went absolutely ham. The bench didn't do much. There was no Melo.
Yep.
But, I mean, Dane got 30. CJ got 27. Powell got 18. Nurk got 17. Just took care of business where we need to take care of business. They have terrible bigs. I mean, Podol, Pedal, that guy. Just not good enough to stop Nurk. He bullied him all night. We got 52 points in the paint. Dame was doing whatever he wanted to do. So just an all-around solid victory against another playoff caliber team that was at full strength.
Yeah, and I think the starters set the tone when they come out and really handle the other team's starters. I think if the bench can do just enough to keep us alive, we don't really have a strong bench. I know people like Anthony and they like Melo, but to be honest with you, I hold my breath when they're in the game. The other thing is for us, I feel like 120 points is the magic number. If we can score 120, typically we win that game. And I know that we're a middle of the road defense with Nurk on the floor this year. There's just no two ways about it. That's just how it is. Yeah, we've been better. Now, are we ever going to be a top defending team? No, but we can't really complain about being like 15th, 16th in the league in defensive efficiency. I think for me, we just with the way the starters have been playing, CJ and Dame have both been back on their game the way that they have played in years past, in years where we've been a really tough out. And I don't think anybody wants to play us right now. I know that we are not a good defending team. The only thing that scares me is I do think we can get exploited by the bigger, stronger teams like the Clippers, like the Jazz, like the Lakers. But we're really healthy. Fingers crossed. We're really healthy right now, and we're firing on all cylinders. So let's just keep doing it. Keep rolling out there.
Yeah, and you talk about defense and the Spurs especially. I mean, their primary weapon is DeRozan, of course, and DeRozan is just a fit giver for us. He destroys CJ. He destroys Dame. He's a mid-range monster. He doesn't shoot the three, at least not often, but he's able to score anywhere he wants in the paint. I mean, you get the guy 15, 20 feet out, and that's basically like a slam dunk for him. I mean, he's so efficient down there. They held him to 20 points, and they held the Spurs total to 40% on the night. Again, they're one of those teams that are trying to fight for wins too. They want to try to position themselves as best as possible, try to sneak up to that 8 seed, so they can only have to play the one game. And they, again, have played us tough all year. So when you come out and you play that kind of defense against a team that's given you fits all year, you got to be proud of that, especially on the second night of a back-to-back, especially after dealing with the Lakers on the night before, to come out and continue to take care of business. Fans in the building once again. You see the impacts that they make, and just everybody was clicking on all cylinders again, which is just awesome to see. So
yeah, there's not a ton. I don't have a ton of takeaways. I don't think that there's anything special about this game the way there was from the Laker game. It's just nice to see execution. I do think so. The big debate and the story came out this week, and we have to talk about it. The whole Fire Stotts thing, and we've changed our opinion this year several times. I think at the start of the year, we were staunch defenders of Stotts, and the last 3 weeks I was critical of him. And now the report comes out that unless we have a really miraculous run here, that he's probably going to lose his job. How much stock do you put in the media? I mean, do you think that that's definitely 100% true? And how do you feel about potentially firing him and replacing him with Jason Kidd or Nate McMillan?
Yeah, we'll talk about some of these replacements in just a sec. But yeah, man. So here's the thing. A lot of this reporting came out, and a lot of this stuff came out when we were struggling. We were 0-5 before we hit the road trip. And I think things change a little bit when you go 5-1 on the road trip. You've just gone 2-0 at home in a back-to-back situation. You just took care of the Lakers. You took care of Boston. I mean, yeah, Atlanta was rough, but that was the one blemish that you have in the recent weeks. So that obviously turns things around for the Stotts perspective. I don't know. I believe it. I believe the sources that it came from. I think that it's been such a rough year that and we've talked about this before, and I don't really know how to put it. It's not that I'm a fire Stotts guy, and not that I'm not a fire Stotts guy. I think the team has other problems. I don't care who our coach is. I don't think we're a championship caliber team, regardless. I mean, people don't want to give Stotts credit for when they do good and when they get wins. I hear the fire Stotts crowd on Twitter just go silent. I don't see it after a game. I don't see them, oh, Stotts should have done this. Oh, Stotts was terrible this game. That only comes out when we lose.
Yep.
And so and I get that because that's frustrating. You need something to blame, and the fire Stotts thing's been the motto all year. And so when the team's struggling, that's where you go. But I just think they're getting complacent. I think we've talked about it. The CJ and Dame thing's never going to work out, but I just don't think the team is going to change any particular kind of way that's going to give us any more success than what we've gotten in the past. I just don't, and I think that's on the coach, the systems that they run, the plays that they run, the defense that they run, that's on him. I still think player energy and personnel is a problem. But if we don't come out and do really good in the playoffs, especially playing this hot right now, yeah, I don't think he comes back. And I think that's unfortunate for him because you're probably drawing Denver or the Clippers, and both of those situations are not ideal for us matchup-wise, whether it be the Denver's forwards or the wings of the Clippers. It's just bad either way.
Yeah.
So I asked the fans, we put out a poll about kind of what they thought miraculous would be. How does Stotts keep his job? I basically said, are you happy with a second round series that goes 6-7 games and you lose in a 7-game series? Western Conference Finals, do you get back there, maybe play decent, win 1 or 2 games before you get taken out? There's the finals. If he makes the finals for the first time in how many years, do you think, okay, bring him back? And I think, unfortunately, like 70% of people basically said, no, just get rid of him no matter what. And that's the sad thing about fans right now. It's like, just shut up. Like, that's terrible. That's a terrible take. You don't get rid of a coach who's made the playoffs as many years in a row as Stotts has made the playoffs with superstars if you make the Western Conference Finals or if you make the finals. If you do that good again in this weird year with limited fans now, then yeah, you got to hope that when you get fans back in the building next year and you run it back with Covington and Nurk and these guys again, and maybe you convince Powell to stay, whatever the situation is. I think it's ridiculous to think that he doesn't come back in that situation. But if you get knocked out in the second round, or if you even make it, which I still think is unlikely, time to make a change for sure.
I get it. I understand. He doesn't make adjustments. I hate the drop the big defensive scheme. I do feel like we should be better defensively. Offensively, I think it depends on how we shoot. I mean, if we shoot like over 50% or 48% and higher from field goal range, and if our threes are open and we knock them down, our offense looks fantastic. If we have an off shooting night, we look like crap. And so at the end of the day, I don't know what people want Stotts to do offensively to make this team better. I know Dame should play off ball more, and I know that you want to see more open corner threes out of guys like Powell, but a lot of it comes down to execution. The other thing is, so if you look at other teams, like for example, let's look at the Bulls. They cannot find a head coach. The Pacers fired Nate McMillan, and now their head coach has caused more problems in the locker room than the previous regime. So the other thing you have to think about is, yeah, schematically, maybe Stotts isn't a wizard, right? He's not Greg Popovich, and he's not the greatest coach of all time. But he has control of the locker room. He has everybody's buy-in still. You can tell that the team is still fighting for him. And if you give that up, what happens if Dame wants to? I mean, I know you can't play the what-if game, but what if Dame doesn't want to play for another coach? What if the next coach pisses him and CJ off? What if we don't improve defensively under the next coach? It's just, to me, I understand people like change in this environment, but at the end of the day, you have to say Stotts, O'Shea, and Dame in their 8 years with this organization, they've made it 8 straight years. They've made the playoffs. Now, I think Dame's rookie year we didn't, and that was Stotts' rookie year as a coach too. But
Wasn't his rookie year, I don't think. Maybe it was. I don't know.
I-
Either way.
there's 1 year where we didn't,
Close
but it's
enough.
like 8 years in a row. And if you want to change that chemistry, I understand that, but you have to understand that we could get much worse, right?
Oh, it's extremely possible. You look at it all over the place. I mean, look at Kerr. I mean, the guy loses Thompson and Durant. Now they're calling for his head in Golden State, and I mean they're finally playing better, but those fans hate him. You look at all around the league. I mean, you look at certain situations where, I mean, the coaches are, in my opinion, the coaches are a relatively small part of a basketball team. I mean, yes, they're the ones who are in charge of the rotations, the substitutions, what to do with injuries. They're the ones who make the challenges. They're the ones who, make the adjustments and game planning. But it's happened so fast out there. It's still up to the players to be able to react and be able to execute what the coaches want them to do. And I agree with you. It's not like Stotts is playing 2K and has a controller in his hand. It's like, hey, Dame, you need to get around that screen and defend better. Hey, Cantor, stop going down low. You need to react like Nurk does and go up and help. And I mean, I get they're doing what the coaches are telling them to do to some extent, but these guys are still out there playing 5-on-5. They're still able to come out there and do things and make plays to try to help the team out, and that's not on the coaching. So,
and you and I are similar in the way of like, okay, if you're a Fire Stotts person, who do you want to be his replacement? Because
the list of replacements. Ooh.
The name of coaches that came out in that article that said that the Blazers were looking at were, quite frankly, not impressive to me. Jason Kidd has been fired from 2 teams. Brooklyn and Milwaukee basically wanted him gone. The Nate McMillan, we've already had him as a coach. He's been gone. I can't even remember the other names in there, but none of them were any good to me. There's definitely no
Joger, whatever his name is.
Dave Joerger. Yep. Dave Joerger. He was a Memphis coach, and he was with the Kings, and once again got fired and let go. So to me, you're looking at all these past coaches. There's no new up and comers that are right there. I mean, Mike Budenholzer's kind of on the hot seat for the Bucks. If you want to bring in a guy who's like defensive minded, he's kind of the anti-Stotts, but if they're going to fire him, why would you want a coach that just got fired from another team that couldn't win it all with better personnel? It doesn't really add up to me. And if you want to go find the next sexy young head coach, okay, fine, bring him in. But if he's worse and he can't control the locker room and he loses the locker room, I'm going to sit here next year and laugh at you for firing Stotts. I'm sorry, I am.
It's a tough dynamic because if you go get a guy like the big name that all the fans seem to want, like Vanderpool. So if you go get a guy like him and he come in, he has no head coaching experience, and I think he'd have a fine relationship with the players. I don't think that's going to be an issue. He is more defensive minded, but he has no experience, and you worry about that with guys. I understand that this is how they get experience, and some of these guys have been assistants for a long time, and they've at least been around, and some of them have been put in charge of certain situations. Like Vanderpool was basically the defensive head coach of Minnesota, and we saw how that worked out. And so I worry about these guys coming in and just taking too long to get it down. You don't want to waste Dame and CJ's prime. I mean, I don't want CJ here anyway, but if he's going to be here and those are your guys, you worry a little bit about how they're going to gel. I agree 100%. At least we know that Stotts is consistent and we've been successful underneath him. I don't care if we fire him, but you better hope, like you said, that the next guy that comes in doesn't ruin the chemistry, doesn't waste the last 3-4 years that we probably have in Dame's solid prime at this point. And it's just a huge risk. It's scary.
What if the next coach doesn't do a drop the big scheme and he tries to run Nurk out to the perimeter and then our guards get blown by and it's like a layup line for the first 6 or 7 games next year? It's just a layup line. That could happen. Man.
Or just alley-oop after alley-oop.
Yeah. And then Stotts is like, see, I told you, like these guards, they can't attack at the point of they can't stop the ball, right? So then a driving guard is going to get past them, and guys like Trae Young are going to exploit their passing. I mean, it's funny to me. I do think that, I mean, if you want to bring in a new head coach, you probably should trade CJ too, just because.
We talked about that, right? The double keys, the Toronto effect.
Yeah, you can't do it all. So anyway, the other thing, I mean, you want to go more on Stotts, or are you good?
I think we've said all we need to say. Yeah. I mean, as far as that list of coaches goes, I know everybody's hot and sexy on McMillan right now because of what Atlanta's doing, but we talked about it when we talked about the Atlanta game. The personnel that they have right now, the youth, I mean, they're 2 of the best bigs in the league. Young's one of the best guards in the league. They got great vets in Bogdanovich, Gallinari, and Lou Williams. I mean, that's
everything.
you're not gonna. That's just different. It's a team that, yeah, and I get they sucked before him and he changed that culture around, but it's still a matter of personnel that I just don't think we have. I think Atlanta's a top 5 team in the East next year, top 4 team easily if they keep their same core.
They got healthy after they fired their coach. So like they got McMillan.
Right.
Yeah, that's great. But they also got healthy at the right time. So it's sort of a catch-22. I don't know, man. Let's take a stand here.
We'll talk more about it when he gets fired in the offseason, which is seeming like the more and more likely scenario. We'll be able to touch base and we'll be able to comment more on that. But as far as I'm concerned, but I don't know. I'm fine with either one. Like I don't mind him going, because not for the reasons that people want him gone for, but just because I think a culture change could be the right move. But I don't think it matters unless they trade TJ. So I also don't care if they bring him back.
It would be fun to see a new scheme implemented. Also to see a coach who maybe could use a guy like Derek Jones and could use his dunking skills, or Anthony Simon's dunking skills for that matter. I do think that our offense is a lot of ISO. It's a lot of Dame and CJ just one-on-one beating their defender. But when you have that personnel, that's what you're going to do, right? And if you need to win ball games, in this league, especially right now at the end of the year where everything is on the line, you're not going to start running lob plays for Derek Jones when you have these three amazing scoring guards in Powell as well, who can get you 20. So,
well, right, because Dame and CJ's games are ISO. That's the best thing that they do.
That's their game.
So we run a lot of ISO ball because our 2 best players are prime ISO scorers. That's their skill set. Dame is a step back shooter. He drives around you if you come out on him. He gets some help with the screens, sure.
PNR,
but he's not. His game is not looking to pass to the open guy. You want the ball in Dame's hands, and that's what he does well. And same as CJ. CJ's a ball handler. He can get his own shot. Yeah, he could pass to somebody and they can move the ball around and try to get an open look from 3. But we already attempt the most threes in the league, and I just don't know. Like, that's what the offense has been doing. Like, we've been shooting threes. We've been getting the ball. I don't know. It's going to be an interesting thing. But like I said, I don't want to touch too much more on it right now. We have some other things we're going to go over. We're almost done here. But that, to me, has been just an interesting storyline all year. And we're really going to be able to see what happens. And I'm a little fearful. But at the same time, I'm fine if we make a change as long as they do their research and you don't get a Jason Kidd or a Nate McMillan. I don't want either of those guys. And honestly, Atlanta's probably keeping McMillan anyway, so you might as well scratch his name off the list.
Yeah, if he has good rapport with Trae Young and the young guys there, I think that they will hire him. Okay, the other thing that sort of rocked my world was right before the Cavs game, early on in the week. Chris Haynes. Why do you hate the Blazers? So anyways, Kevin Love comes out and basically says he wants to come play in Portland for basically free if he gets bought out or whatever happens with his contract, because obviously we can't obtain a max from him. How do you feel about Kevin Love? Every single podcast has their opinion, and they've said what they've said about him. How do you feel? Where do you weigh in here?
I mean, if he's going to come in and he's going to be $2.5 million like Carmelo, I mean, I don't want Carmelo back next year, and I think that Love can do more than Melo's doing. I think scoring wise, if you can get him to stay healthy, and that's the biggest thing with Love is just health. The guy can shoot the 3. He's he knows how to rebound. I won't say he's a prime rebounder anymore at this point in his career, but I mean, this was a rebounding monster back in the day. He knows the positioning. He can score from anywhere in the paint, and he's still, got enough juice in him to be able to be athletic enough to warrant starting at your 4 or just really even being that primary backup 4 where Melo's doing right now. I don't mind that. I mean, I'd take him, and I would move Covington to the 3. You get more perimeter defense that way. And I think Love is still good enough to kind of get out and be able to help out a little more. Or you just, like I said, or you leave him in the bench. Either way, I love having him here for a year or two while you're kind of rounding out Dame's prime. The more vets that we can keep on this team, in my opinion, the better.
Yeah.
Guys that have been around. He's championship experience. He's won the championship with LeBron in Cleveland. So he knows what it's like to play in the playoffs. I think that he's just unhappy right now. I don't think, you talk about injuries and stuff like that. Yeah, that's a problem. But it's also when he's out there, he's had his fair share of issues with the Cavs. He's definitely not going back there. There's absolutely no way. Either he gets traded to a contender or he gets bought out along with every other single star that's gotten bought out this year. And if he wants to come back and play for cheap, I think you'd be dumb not to take him. I think you get him and you bring Collins back for cheap and you have a really good rotation from bigs that you don't have to pay a lot of money to. And that's the other thing that people don't realize is if we keep CJ, you are not going to have money. Like, you have to take advantage of a guy like Kevin Love wanting to come and play for $3 million. Like, yes, please. I will take that in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
While you bring up guys like Little still and things like that. So I'm all for it.
Yeah, I think it's a win now move. I'd be into it. I'd just give him the mellow role, and I'd try to play him at small ball 5. I mean, you saw when he was
Yeah,
in Minnesota. I know he was a bigger, stronger, girthier player, but you saw in
no, he's
Minnesota
still pretty girthy.
well, he's vegan now, and he's kind of skinnier and
No, yeah,
smaller. He's a stretch 4.
that's why
He
he
doesn't
gets hurt
have
all the time.
yeah, he doesn't have exactly. That's why he gets hurt all the time. Eat some freaking beef, Kevin Love. But anyway,
No
I think
disrespect to vegans, by the way.
I think him as a small ball 5 would be interesting behind Nurk. I do agree with you. You could pair him up with Collins, you could pair him up with Nurk, you could start him if you want. But the thing to me is like you're gonna sit here. All these people came out today and are like, he's exactly the same thing as Melo. You really want to take another Melo on your team? It's like he's really not, though. You don't understand. He's only a year older than Dame. Really, he's in the prime of his career. He may not be as good as he used to be, but
I
he's
don't know if
never
he's in
been.
his prime anymore, but I don't know about that. But
Well,
I mean, he's like what, 35. He's not a year older than Dame. He's a little up there, but
no, I'm pretty sure he's only like 32 or 33. I don't think he's that old. People have this crazy idea that he was drafted way long. He's not that old. So here's my thing. He could be a stretch 4 for you. He could play small ball 5. He could be a matchup nightmare for certain teams. He's not going to defend. The problem is you would need Melo to not be on this team. And I think a lot of people are starting to get attached to Melo again, and I don't really understand why. I feel like Kevin Love would be a much better version of Melo and at least give a damn on defense more often than Melo does. But anyway, I think he'd be a great pair with the front court, and I think he could play backup minutes for 20, 25 a game.
I wasn't all about having a hometown guy come back. You know, this was his state. This is his home. So if he comes back, and I agree. I think that Melo is what Melo is. They both can shoot the 3. If you give them an open 3, they're going to knock down the 3 more often than not. I mean, that's Kevin Love's game. But I do think he rebounds better. So if you play him at the 4 or you play him at the small ball 5, you're not going to lose the rebounding. We don't know what's going to happen with Cantor.
Yep. Melo's not a good rebounder.
Melo, he's never there. He's not. I mean, he can rebound. We all know he has his famous catchphrase, but
yeah,
he's not that way anymore. He doesn't have the same length that Kevin Love has, and again, the ability to read a rebound and do those things.
Yeah, Kevin
I don't know. I just
32.
feel like okay. Well, you got me there. Really?
He's
Okay.
only 32, man.
Well, it's because he's always hurt. He looks like an old man when he's moving out there now, but
He does.
I just think the energy will be there for him. I think just the last couple of years since LeBron left, he just hasn't wanted to play hard. I still think he has some juice in the tank if he can bring him back in front of the Portland crowd. And I absolutely think Kevin Love is a great move. And I'm reaching for the bargain bin. You know that little bin of movies or DVDs at Walmart you walk through? You're like, oh, man, $5.
Yep.
What is this? Homeward Bound 10? Yes, I'll buy Homeward Bound 10 for $3. I wonder what happened to those cats. So, I mean, it's like you're going to take what you can get. And we talked about it with Marcus Aldridge. We talked about it with Blake Griffin. We talked about it with a lot of these guys in the buyout market. Absolutely take a guy if you can get him for super cheap. If you can bring him in at a decent contract, we just don't have the money to go out and get a lot of help. So
are people who were saying they wanted LaMarcus Aldridge when he got bought out by the Spurs saying they don't want Kevin Love? That doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I understand his health has been an issue, but the dude's not going to play for a Cleveland team since LeBron left. He took that max contract hoping he'd get traded, and they just haven't moved him. And I understand that he probably should have more loyalty than that, but there's a lot of dominoes that have fallen since that 2018 Cavs fallout that LeBron left in the wake. So I don't know, man. I would take him in a heartbeat. I think it'd be crazy not to.
I agree. I'm right there with you on that. Yeah. So 100%.
You want to cover the last 4 games of the season while we wind down here?
Well, I'll do our favorite segment first. I don't really have a big one today. It's nothing crazy. There's no good news out there right now for any of our previous Blazers. So the official Blazing New Trails ex-player of the week is Patty Mills. I just saw him play. I thought about Patty. And Patty is on the Spurs now. I don't know how many people actually remember Patty Mills. I mean, you had to be around for the Roy era and the LaMarcus era, kind of in the beginning of that stretch before he left us and went to greener pastures and took LaMarcus with him eventually. But Patty Mills. Correct me if I'm wrong, everybody. I could be wrong. I didn't take enough time to research this, and quite frankly, I wasn't going to because I don't know what kind of bench guys were out there on the team. But I'm pretty sure Patty Mills is the last player to put on a Blazers uniform to win a championship when he won it with the Spurs. I don't think anybody else that's left our team has gone to another team and won a championship. I was thinking about it. I'm like, there's nobody on the Lakers because Wesley just joined this year. He wasn't there last year for their championship run. Nobody's been on Golden State, as far as I know, and they basically won every championship. So I was thinking Toronto, and I couldn't remember if there was any explanations on Toronto, and I don't think there was. So, as far as I know, he's the last Blazer to put on a player to put on the Blazers uniform that's won a championship.
I think so, unless Steve Blake won like an NCAA tournament game recently, because I think Steve Blake is still playing basketball somewhere.
I wish he was. I'm a huge Steve Blake fan. I've been back.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's hard to rack your brain like that. I mean, I can't think of another Mo Harkless. No, I don't think so, man. I don't think so.
So yeah, hats off. And the reason I bring him up not only is because we just played the Spurs and I just happened to see him and I was like, I'm just going to use him this week because it's not how my mind works. I'm much more detailed than that.
It's a very planned podcast. We spent a lot of hours and time not playing Apex Legends and talking about how we're going to do the podcast.
No, and I got football stuff going on. I got Aaron Rodgers wants to leave. Anyway. Let's not go down that. Point is, the reason I bring up Patty Mills is because I feel like that's the type of player that we've had the last couple of years that has been so successful in our system that we just don't have right now. Yeah. And it's that backup veteran point guard that can hit the three, is an annoying little gnat on defense. I mean, you think of the Shabazz Napiers, you think of the Seth Currys, you think of the guys that we've had, the Mo Williams throughout the years, and Patty Mills was one of those guys that. He didn't get a lot of run for Portland, but with the Spurs, he's gotten a ton of minutes as their backup point guard. He played starting point guard for him a few times before they decided to get more athletic. And I don't know. The idea of having an Aussie on the team just excites me. And I wish we had a player of that kind of caliber because no disrespect to Anthony right now, but I think he's better suited as a shooting guard. He's a poor man CJ, in my opinion. I think he's going to get there eventually, but it's been 3 years and not seeing it. Having that veteran guard come in and who can kind of shoot the open three, and you can run an offense and play decent enough defense I just feel like we haven't had it in a while, and it's an issue. When we let Curry go, I mean, it was noticeable.
I definitely agree with you. I think the Shabazz Napier and even Seth Curry, if you look at 2019, Seth Curry was very vital to get us into that playoff series against Denver and played well. I think Austin Rivers would have been the guy I look at this year as that backup point guard who could facilitate and run an offense capably when I don't think Dame and CJ are staggered, so one of them is out there all the time. But Anthony Simons just looks lost sometimes, and I think that's gonna come up to bite us a couple times in the playoffs. Now, whether or not he can step up, because when he is electric, it's ridiculous, dude. He can hit threes as well as anybody in the league when he's on. Defensively, he looked a lot better the last 2 weeks. I'm not trying to dump on him here. It's just one of those things where I do agree with you, and backup point guard is going to be an issue in the playoffs if we can't figure something out here.
Yeah, but it's just like I said, it's just cool I don't know. You talk about these guys. Patty Mills is one of those Blazers that kind of like Jared Bayless kind of had one of those roles, wasn't getting a lot of run, which is kind of used sparingly, hit some threes. Was the Anthony Simons role for us for a long time. And then when he you talk about Barton, a lot of those guys that kind of had that role. And he's carved out a nice chunk of real estate in the rotation for the Spurs since he's gone there. He hasn't played for any other team. Popovich loves him. So it's just kind of cool to see him out there still playing at this point in his career, still being a good role player for him. And I personally wish we had a role player like that. But yeah, I just thought it was interesting. I was thinking about like Blazers who have who won a championship on another team, and I'm probably wrong. I mean, like I said, I'm not going to keep going with this.
It was 2015, right, that the Spurs won, 2015. So 16, 17, those are Golden State, Cleveland years. You're looking at the 2019 Raptors. I don't see it, man. I don't see it. I don't think there's any way anybody since Patty Mills in 2015.
Yeah, I was thinking like Rolo, but I don't think he was anywhere that won the championship. So yeah, that's best one player for the week. So shout out, good job, Patty Mills. And then that's what I have for that. So I guess I'm pretty much done. If you want to start rolling out to the next 4 games and kind of discuss that real quick.
Yeah, so this is weird to say. This is the last week of the regular season. Tomorrow we play the Rockets on Monday at home. Then we go on a 2-game road streak where we've got to play the Jazz on Wednesday and the Suns on Thursday. So a back-to-back on the road against the 1-2 seeded teams. Now, if they are completely locked, they may rest, or if anybody's banged up, nicked up, they may rest. So we'll see. All bets are off. And then next Sunday we play the Nuggets at home. In a game that could decide seeding. I mean, I'm feeling good about where we're at right now. I think that the 6th seed is within our grasp. We had like an 80% chance of locking the 6th seed as long as we beat the Lakers and taking care of them and the Spurs. You take care of business this weekend. This week, I think we just have to win 2 of those games. That's it.
Yeah, and Houston should be a gimme. Worst team in the league right now. They have nothing that you're scared of. Wall's done for the year.
Wait.
I say it should be a gimme, but to me, it's a Cavaliers type of situation. You go out, take care of business, execute against that team. The Lakers got to play the Suns today. So if the Lakers lose to the Suns, I think they're an official 2 games down from us, and we have the tiebreaker. So, yeah, I mean, you're getting to that point where the magic number is probably 2 games to lock up the 6th seed. And the Mavs, I mean, the Mavs I think they play the Cavaliers today, so they don't have a threat here. I don't know what the Mavs schedules looks like. We have the tiebreaker with the Mavs, so it's very possible that if they drop 1 more, 2 more, and you win 2 more, then you're right there with them. So take care of Houston. I don't like having to play back-to-back against the Jazz or the Suns. That does not make me feel good. But Denver very well could be our first-round matchup. So that's an interesting dynamic when you think about it. Ending your season against them and then turning around. You're basically playing a potential 8-game series against Denver. Yeah. I know it doesn't count, but as far as like adjustments and things like that and what you're going to see in game film and all that different stuff that comes with it, going to be an interesting warm-up game there.
And we've had their number in the playoffs in years past. I mean, 2019, we beat them, but it was a 7-game series, and it took every freaking second of that series for us to win it. So it was close. It wasn't like we dominated them or anything like that. I do feel like we match up better against Denver and their guards than the Clippers wing stoppers, because the Clippers are just a nightmare to me. But, I mean, defensively, I'm not as afraid of the Clippers as I am of Jokic doing the crazy offensive stuff he's been doing this year. So it's a catch-22. Either way, you got to come out and play well. I mean, Powell's going to have to show up. CJ's going to have to score 25 or more in a lot of those games. It's just going to be a necessity. So.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I think you got to take care of Houston, see what happens with. You can split the Jazz or the Suns if you can get one of those games. And really, we've been all right against the Suns this year. So, and we've historically played relatively well against the Jazz. I mean, they're just kicking butt this year, but if you can split one of those 2 games fully healthy right now, and then you take care of Houston, you probably got at least the 6th seed locked up, and then we'll see what happens in the Mavericks, and we'll start talking about the Clippers and Denver next pod. I mean, we'll probably know who we're going to play or get pretty close to it at that point, and both teams scare me for different reasons. We'll get into that, but for now, just take care of Houston, and we'll see what happens with that back-to-back.
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be a big week, and we're looking forward to it. Just stay out of the play-in. Good Lord, just stay out of that. That's all I care about.
Well, we should be good there, thank goodness. Let Curry go take out LeBron. I'd love it.
That'd be fun. That'd be interesting.
So, man, anything else you got? I think I've covered everything that I wanted to chat about on this pod. We've recapped a pretty big, wild week of games.
Wild.
Our motto is always going 500 or better. 4-1 is pretty darn good.
Yeah, we didn't get too low after the losing streak. We were definitely a little bummed out about that, but we haven't got too high off the winning streak either. Just keep taking care of business. Proud of the guys and the effort. It's been great to have fans in the stands. That just felt good, man. It felt good to watch. So, no, everything's all good in Blazerland. Let's take care of business this week, and then we'll talk next week about playoffs.
Sounds good. And remember, everybody, subscribe, like the video if you do. Follow us on Twitter. Feel free. I'm at AbeLaylock24. And you're just like at Craig Moshkow or something like that.
Yeah, if you can spell it, you can find it. That's my motto.
Follow us. We like to interact. We love to get involved. Leave your comments on the video. Ask us questions. We'll continue to do what we do. Appreciate it. Shout out to Bryce Roberts again for editing the videos for us. We're going to continue to work with him, hopefully, and continue to make that successful. And we appreciate all you guys' support again. Have a good one. I'm out.
We out.